This page is the front cover of Dreamcast magazine, issue 03, from December 1999. It's a South Park cover feature, with Stan shouting tree-hugging hippie crap, and the promise of exclusive coverage on SoulCalibur and Soul Fighter. They're even giving away 5 UEFA Striker Dreamcasts in a competition. You can see a list of games reviewed in this issue at the bottom, a right mixed bag from racing games like F1 World GP and Suzuki Alster Racing, fighters like SoulCalibur and Marvel vs. Cap.com, and even some of the more quirky titles like Pen Pen and Chef's Love Shack, and plenty more in between. This page is a right laugh, split into 2 halves. On the left you've got a typical Sega Dreamcast advert, playing on priorities. Luxuries are listed as bread, water, air, and then they cheekily put essentials, with pictures of Sonic Adventure, SoulCalibur, and Sega Rally 2 box art. It's saying life's about priorities, and the Dreamcast is the most powerful console, and these games are essential. They're joking about strapping software lineups and new games every week, telling you to turn off the heating and get a stomach staple so you can afford more games. Then on the right, it's the highlights page. Big South Park feature, Stan's right there shouting, looks like they're covering Chef's Love Shack and South Park Rally in the showcase this month. Below that, there's a fella leaning over a pool table, looks like Jimmy White maybe. There's a big interview down the side. Yep, Jimmy White is interviewed about Jimmy White's 2, Cue Ball. Then Greg Zeshuk from BioWare is being interviewed about MDK2, which is coming to the Dreamcast. And Shiny Entertainment. Looks like Criterion Studios are in there talking about bikers on page 82. And Archer McLean is chatting about Jimmy White's 2, Cue Ball again on page 90. Right at the bottom it mentions Russell Barnes is the editor. And it's Dreamcast Monthly, December 1999 issue, page 3. Good stuff. This issue features a diverse range of Dreamcast games. Loading includes MDK2, while previews highlights Fur Fighters. The files teases Dreamcast content, with SoulCalibur receiving praise. Shenmue, though potentially delayed, is anticipated. Previews cover titles like 4-Wheel Thunder and Shenmue. The review section is extensive, featuring Aero Wings, SoulCalibur, and many others. Features include The Truth Is In Here and Renderware for Games. Regular sections like Cheat Code Central and Next Month are present, alongside interviews with figures like Archer McLean and Jimmy White. This page is the forum section, Have Your Say, where readers are writing in to the magazine. The first letter is about piracy on the Dreamcast and questions what Sega is doing about it, with the reader mentioning playing imported games and using a visual memory unit to copy saves. DCM responds that Sega is indeed working to combat piracy by using GDROMs and taking legal action. The next section, Now Loading, is also reader letters and DCM responses. One reader is asking if the Dreamcast is outdated compared to PlayStation 2, and DCM assures them the Dreamcast still has a lot to offer and mentions impressive games. There's a question about whether Dreamcast games should be 2D or 20D, with the reader preferring 2D fighters like Marvel vs. Capcom, Resident Evil, Code Veronica, and Capcom vs. SNK. DCM responds that there is still a demand for these types of games, and that Capcom and Namco are both making both 2D and 3D titles. On the right side of the page there is a FAQ-styled box, which is an advert for Dreamcast magazine itself. There is also an image of what looks to be Cassandra from SoulCalibur. The Dreamcast is off to a strong start in Europe, breaking sales records with over 100,000 units sold, fueled by demand in games like Sonic Adventure. However, the arrival of the PlayStation 2 looms, with the article questioning if Sega should be worried. The PS2, featuring a DVD player and Emotion Engine, is priced at £199 in the UK. In other news, a DualShock-style controller is planned for the Dreamcast. Stock press sections reveal memory expansion details, a stylus peripheral, Pen, and potential colored Dreamcast releases. Excitingly, a Sonic Adventure 2 is hinted at, while Resident Evil, Code Veronica, is delayed until December. Despite the looming competition, the Dreamcast has plenty to offer. Sega is developing 4 new Sonic games, including a sequel to Nights and a Samba de Amigo title. Other upcoming Dreamcast games include Choo Choo Rockets, a 4-player puzzle game, Phantasy Star Online, with online play, and an updated Sonic Adventure. Resident Evil 2, Biohazard 2 in Japan is coming to Dreamcast, with a playable Code Veronica demo. Japanese CD shops are selling game soundtracks, and Sega's website, SegaWave, is the place to go. Logic 3 is releasing a SoundStation sound system for Dreamcast. Taiwan has reduced Dreamcast prices due to a chip manufacturing issue. Upcoming Japanese releases in November include Space Griffon, Choo Choo Rocket, Here vs. Ken, Berserk, and several others. Space Channel 5 and Virtua Striker 2 are also in development. Kentinu. This page kicks off with Sega getting all excited about a new European internet deal with Excite, meaning Dreamcast owners will get access to localized search capabilities across Europe, making navigating the web on the console a bit easier. Then there's a headline that grabs your attention, and you thought it would never happen. It's all about Lara Croft of Tomb Raider fame in discussions with Sega. Rumors are swirling that Tomb Raider 4 could be heading to the Dreamcast, even though Core Design had an exclusivity deal with Sony for the PlayStation. Sounds like Sega are trying to tempt them over, which would be a massive coup. Warrington Norsa has mail. Elsewhere, there's news about the Association of Independent Software Publishers launching a seal of quality for games, trying to set some standards and reassure us punters we're getting decent games. Midway are in the spotlight with NBA Showtime, with none other than Shaquille O'Neal as the cover star. Apparently Shaq is a big gamer himself. The game promises over-the-top basketball action, with all 29 NBA teams, and loads of realistic NBA players. They're boasting about the graphics being the hottest graphics I've ever seen for a basketball game. Finally, and this is a bit of a downer, Shenmue's Japanese release date has slipped. It was planned for October, but Yu Suzuki's team need a bit more time, pushing it back to spring 2000. They're working hard to perfect the visuals using CG, and want to make sure it's absolutely top-notch. This page is all about renderware for games, the middleware from Criterion Software. It seems they're really pushing the boat out, claiming it's a top-notch 3D library, and boasting about their long history in 3D graphics. They're making a big deal about how many polygons you can chuck into a game world, and manipulate in real time with renderware, making it easier for developers. They're saying it's all about ease of use and making life simpler for everyone involved in game development. They mention a few games that have used it or will use it, including Deep Fighter, Trick Style, and Suzuki All-Star Extreme Racing. Looks like they're keen for developers to check out their website too, at renderware.com. The next page in Dreamcast magazine is a look at the South Park games. It talks about how the TV show became a massive hit on Comedy Central, and now Acclaim are bringing out a couple of games, the main one simply called South Park, and then Chef's Love Shack. From the looks of it, Chef's Love Shack is more of a party game affair, with screenshots of minigames like Tug of War. They're even showing a quiz question from the game about Mephisto and the hospital. Seems like Acclaim are trying to tap into the South Park madness with these titles. Dreamcast magazine previews the upcoming South Park games. The showcase section highlights the crude humor and intentionally bad animation of the single-player South Park game, aiming to replicate the show's style. Chef's Love Shack is a party game featuring bizarre minigames and trivia. An interview with Doug Tellin, a producer at Acclaim's Melbourne studio, reveals the game was developed alongside multiple platforms by an Australian team. Tellin discusses the positive feedback from South Park creators Matt Stone and Trey Parker, emphasizing the game's comedy. The Dreamcast version, priced at £30, focuses on multiplayer fun. Tellin expresses optimism for the Dreamcast's potential, citing games like Sonic Adventure and SoulCalibur, and anticipates success, particularly in English-speaking markets. South Park Rally for the Dreamcast is a kart racer featuring the show's signature crude style. The game boasts surprisingly good graphics and accurate humor, with surreal elements and crazy weapons like cheesy poofs and chocolate salty balls. Players race across 7 tracks divided into 3 themes, including the South Park elementary school and town environments. The game incorporates bizarre elements, such as the school bus mode with Mr. Crabtree, obstacles like Mr. Hat and Mr. Twig, and psychedelic shortcuts and warps. The game also features Mr. Mackey's inflated head and cheeky monkeys. Dat Demon Do. Built on the same engine as the PlayStation version, the Dreamcast version looks better. The game offers customizable speeds and extra pickups, enhancing replayability. The game promises a laughably daft, over-the-top South Park experience. This page continues to look at South Park Rally on the Dreamcast, under the title, Supercars for Superstars. It seems to be showcasing the different vehicles in the game, with screenshots of each one and their driver, like Cartman in his Cartman Jeep, Kyle in a Kyle Red Porsche, Kenny in his Kenny Go-Kart, and Wendy in Wendy Pink Mercedes, and even some more obscure characters like Mr. Garrison, Chef, and Jesus. It mentions that the graphics, while not revolutionary, are still pleasing and perfectly suited to the South Park style. On the right side of the page, there's an advert for Gameplay.com, pushing their online games retail service. They're boasting about having loads of games at good prices, advice from real players, and a money-back guarantee. They are also highlighting features like free first-class delivery in the UK and free games with every order. It's a typical online retailer advert of the time, trying to get gamers to visit their website. This page features an interview with Jimmy White, the whirlwind himself, in Dreamcast magazine. Seems like he's lending his name to Jimmy White's 2 cue ball on the Dreamcast. Dave Gibbon is the interviewer, and they're chatting about life and the game of snooker. It covers Jimmy's early days, how he got into snooker, and even his opinions on snooker games and the Dreamcast itself. He mentions getting into snooker at school and how he progressed. There's talk about gambling, and he admits to enjoying a bit of a flutter and drinking. He reckons the Dreamcast snooker game is decent, saying it's different class and better than the first one he did with Archer McLean. He seems impressed with the graphics, saying the glow around the cue is spot on. On the side, there's a 10 interesting facts box about Jimmy White. Bits like he made a century break in his early teens, won a load of tournaments, and is a big Arsenal fan. It mentions he earned a fair bit of money in his career, then lost a chunk of it gambling. All in all, a decent interview with a proper character, tying him into the Dreamcast game. MDK2, the sequel to the original action game, is being developed by Shiny Entertainment. Players will control Kurt Hectic, Max the Dog, or Dr. Fluke Hawkins. The game features a third-person perspective, with emphasis on the sniper scope, rib and shoot, and the addition of a chain gun. The story revolves around defending Earth from alien threats. Screenshots showcase the different characters in action. MDK2 promises a blend of action and puzzles across diverse locations, requiring skill and precision. The developers aim to capture the original MDK's feel while expanding the experience, positioning it as a key Dreamcast title. The core gameplay is described as arcade action fun, filled with blasting and puzzles. MDK2 aims to surpass the original, offering a unique experience with 3 playable heroes, Kurt Hectic, Max, and Dr. Hawkins. Each has distinct abilities and weapons. The game features a diverse roster of enemies, including 20 alien types, and boss battles like Zizibaluka and Schwang Schwang. Gameplay combines arcade action with puzzles, expanding on the first game's formula with massive levels spanning Earth, space, and other planets. The story drives the level design. Developer Shiny is collaborating with BioWare, emphasizing a creative and artistic approach through concept art, sound design, and material focus. Screenshots indicate a polished visual style. Overall, MDK2 is shaping up to be a major title, promising a wild and imaginative experience. Boo. This page showcases a couple of upcoming Dreamcast titles. First up we have Slave Zero, a shooter where you play as a massive biomechanical war machine. It sounds like you're tasked with destroying enemy forces in a city run by some bloke called Sockham. The preview highlights the graphics, saying they are superb, and the gameplay is all about killing, running around and explosions, which sounds right up my street. They mention you'll be facing off against Sentinel troops, tanks, and even huge 100-foot titans. Apparently, there are 15 different levels, 5 enemy types, mini-bosses, and 13 missions to get stuck into. It's down as a rage game, published by Infogrames, and slated for release in early 2000. Then we have Midnight GT, a racing game. This one is pitched as a street rally racer, with officially licensed cars that you can tune up. Looks like there are tracks set across 2 continents with different road types and circuit racing, 12 locations in total. It also mentions arcade modes and multiplayer options. This is another Rage-developed title, also published by Rage and due out in Q2 of 2000, categorized as a driving game, naturally. The next page showcases 3 titles, kicking off with Take the Bullet, a shoot-'em-up from Sega and Red Lemon. It's a Quake-style affair where you're tasked with protecting a presidential candidate, Jack Travis. Apparently you can play this with 4 mates at home, or go online with up to 16 players. They reckon it's got 18 levels and loads of enemies and weapons. Then we have Worldwide Soccer 2000 from Silicon Dreams and Sega. This is all about the beautiful game, and they're really pushing the stadium detail and graphics. It's running at a smooth 50 frames per second, and they're boasting about the realistic stadiums, crowd chants and all the atmosphere. They've even got screenshots of Wembley and Highbury in there. Lastly, there's Alone in the Dark 4, an action-adventure game from Infogrames and Darkworks. They're calling it the grandfather of the genre returning. It seems to be focusing on atmosphere, camera angles, and a strong story. They're saying it's aiming to bring back the classic Alone in the Dark vibe, with more atmosphere and macabre storylines, so it sounds like they're going back to its survival horror roots. Dreamcast driving game previews showcase 3 titles. Vigilante 8. Second Offense from Activision and Luxoflux promises intense vehicular combat with destructible environments, character variety, and car upgrades, aiming for a January release. Test Drive 6 by Infogrames and Accolade, the 6th installment in a long-running series, boasts 99 licensed vehicles, diverse driving styles, upgradable attributes, 30 global courses, and a summer 2000 release. Finally, Four-Wheel Thunder from Midway and Callisto offers an off-road experience with 12 real-world locations, various vehicles like buggies and monster trucks, and four-wheel independent suspension, with a March 2000 release planned. This page showcases Shenmue Chapter 1, Yokosuka, positioned as an epic adventure RPG for the Dreamcast. It emphasizes the console's processing power, being perfect for the game's grand scale. Yu Suzuki, the mastermind behind it, is highlighted as a genius, known for creating Virtua Fighter. The preview underlines the game's realism, pointing out incredible details like characters' fingers moving in real time. It's set in Yokosuka, Japan, with a storyline focused on Ryo Hazuki, seeking revenge for his father's murder. Gameplay features are detailed, including time progression, dynamic weather, and a vast interactive world with many characters and locations. They're really pushing the boat out, with the level of detail you can interact with. EC. Graphically, it's touted as pushing boundaries with real-time animation and motion-captured sequences. The Virtua Fighter connection is reinforced, noting the fighting sequences are incorporated and are influenced by it. They mention a spring 2000 release timeframe and quote Shenmue as an epic of love, sadness and romance, reflecting real-life behavior and values. Screenshots show in-game scenes, close-ups of characters, and a portrait of Yu Suzuki himself. It's all shaping up to be something quite special for the Dreamcast. The article previews 2 upcoming games, Fighting Force 2 and Planet of the Apes. Fighting Force 2, an action game developed by Core Design and published by Eidos, promises improved AI and enhanced gameplay compared to its PlayStation predecessor. Screenshots reveal a blocky style characteristic of the time. Planet of the Apes, an action-adventure game from Fox Interactive and VisiWare Software, is based on the classic films, where humans are enslaved by apes. Players take on the role of a human survivor, exploring the mystery of the planet. The second section also includes screenshots. A final section warns Dreamcast players about the scrutiny of cheats, with testing commencing December 23rd. Ad. This page showcases a preview of Deep Fighter from Criterion, slated for release in March 2000. It's pitched as an action-adventure title that's gaining attention for both PC and Dreamcast. The preview emphasizes the game's underwater setting, strategic elements, cutting-edge tech, and diverse storyline. Screenshots illustrate the underwater gameplay, showing various submarines and strange aquatic creatures. The text highlights the puzzle-solving and resource management aspects. Developers like Bob Churchill and Jim Hare are quoted, emphasizing the graphical fidelity and immersive underwater world they're creating. They even mention aiming for a Tomb Raider-esque quality in the puzzles and story, ensuring a rich and engaging experience beneath the waves. The next page continues the preview of Deep Fighter, elaborating on what makes it stand out. It mentions the complex nature of the game, emphasizing its depth and the player's role in uncovering secrets. It highlights the distinct touches that give the game an extra dimension, pointing out the inventive first-person submarine control and the strategic gameplay. The deal section talks about the overarching objective of building a deep-sea civilization and surviving hostile underwater environments, mentioning customizable submarines, varied enemy types, and the need for resource management. The forethought and consideration parts stresses the importance of strategic thinking in combat, suggesting players need to consider their opponent's strengths. The bottom line concludes by emphasizing the immersive and engaging experience Deep Fighter offers, highlighting the combination of action, strategy, and a rich underwater world. Finally, Deep Fighter U describes the player's role as a specialist in this underwater world, facing challenges and battling through the depths. There are more screenshots showcasing the underwater environments and different submarine designs, all reinforcing the immersive deep-sea setting. This page is a preview of Furballs, a game coming from Bizarre Creations, who you might know from their racing titles like Formula 1 and Metropolis Street Racer. This one though is a bit different, looks like an action-adventure. It's due out in the first quarter of 2000. It seems Furballs is all about these, well, furry characters armed to the teeth. The preview talks about a mass of bullet-hungry guys and gunning for glory, so it's clearly got a shooter element. The story is about rescuing families, these Furballs families who have been kidnapped. Looks like there are 6 different furry creatures to play as, and the game's set across 18 big levels. The screenshots show a colourful, cartoonish world, definitely not taking itself too seriously. They mention conceptual insanity and a baby boom level, suggesting there's a fair bit of humour to it as well. Bizarre Creations have certainly been busy with races and titles like Combat Crazy, Fatal Rewind, Wiz and Liz and The Killing Game Show, so they've got a bit of history. This Furballs game looks like a fun, action-packed romp, and a bit of a departure for them, moving into a more character-based action genre. The next page dives deeper into this Furballs game. Continuing the preview, we get a good look at the different playable characters, like Chung, Rufus, Juliet, Bungarv, Tweed, and Rico, each with their own special skills. Juliet, for example, can climb up surfaces, and Rico is a swimmer. It seems level design is split into missions, then levels within those missions, and they've got boss battles, puzzle elements, and collectible tokens dotted about the place. They're talking about fashionable foes enemies, who are these bullet-hungry bad guys dressed in mafia-style suits. Apparently, there are standard trooper types, and desert fox enemies. The article highlights how you can use each character's skills to beat the bad guys, and that the game runs smoothly. They mention there are 18 massive levels across 6 different graphical themes, so it sounds like a pretty big game. The story involves a space center mission, rescuing a shuttle, finding pieces, and a villain called Vigo, who does something drastic like sacrifice a baby. The final stage is even described as a Bond movie finale, so it's sounding pretty ambitious. Certainly looks like they're aiming for something special with Furballs. BioWare's Greg Zeshuk discusses MDK2 for Dreamcast, emphasizing their goal to create a sequel that expands upon the original with increased variety. The Dreamcast version wasn't a simple port but developed concurrently with the PC version, taking advantage of the console's technical capabilities to include additional features. The Dreamcast VUD Dishuk highlights improved graphics and modeling, utilizing tools like 3D Studio Max. The Dreamcast's hardware allows for streamed compression of sound and textures. While acknowledging minor limitations, Zeshuk views the Dreamcast as a platform empowering developers to push both technical boundaries and gameplay. He concludes that the focus should remain on delivering a great game experience. This page is an advertisement for a competition in Dreamcast Monthly magazine, giving away 5 Wafer Striker branded Dreamcast consoles. To win, you need to answer a ridiculously easy question about which company currently sponsors the FA Premier League, and send your answer on a postcard by December 30th to the address provided. The ad features a large image of a footballer celebrating, alongside screenshots from UEFA Striker, and an image of the special Wafer Striker Dreamcast console itself. Infogrames are mentioned as the ones giving away the consoles. This issue's Dreamcast coverage features reviews and previews of several games. SoulCalibur, touted as a potential all-time great, receives a score of 54, while Soul Fighter scores 60. Ready 2 Rumble Boxing gets a 58, and Suzuki All-Star Extreme Racing earns a 68. Other games covered include Aero Wings, Buggy Heat, Dynamite Cop, F1 World Grand Prix, Hydro Thunder, Jimmy White's 2, Q-Ball, Sega Bass Fishing, Marvel vs. Capcom, Street Fighter Alpha 3, Pen, and Tokyo Highway Challenge. The magazine also details its review sections, covering peripherals, gameplay, and publisher/developer information. Sections on the VMU, upcoming games, and a score explanation are included, alongside a casting vote section, detailing the scoring system from 10 to 0. This page features a review of SoulCalibur, which the magazine boldly declares is the one, stating that fighting games will never be the same again. It emphasizes the game's incredible graphics, proclaiming them the sharpest graphics you'll see this side of the millennium. The review mentions that this is the UK version, and they've been waiting for it after reviewing the Japanese version, noting the anticipation has been high. The screenshots showcase the visual fidelity, with characters like Mitsurugi, Sophicia, and Nightmare, and the detailed backgrounds. There's a section discussing Namco's pedigree in fighting games, mentioning their past successes with PlayStation titles like Tekken and Ridge Racer. Interestingly, there is a coming soon box teasing Dead or Alive 2, positioning it as a rival to SoulCalibur, but suggesting SoulCalibur has the edge. There's also a small peripherals section discussing the Dreamcast Fight Stick and its suitability for fighting games like SoulCalibur. Looking at the review score from the previous page, it scored a 54, which seems quite high praise, considering their previous reviews. This page carries on with the SoulCalibur review, and they are still completely bowled over by it, saying it's flawlessly executed no matter what aspect you look at, be it graphics, gameplay, control, or sound. They mention the mission battle mode, which sounds like a proper addition with extra challenges and rewards like picture cards. They then get into the 8-way run system, explaining how it lets you move freely in 3D around the arena, a real step forward for fighting games they reckon. They also touch on the fact this is the PAL version, and say there have been very few changes from the NTSC version. The screenshots continue to show just how stunning the game looks, with characters like Sufisha, Mitsurugi, Nightmare and Xianghua all looking incredibly detailed. The final verdict is a massive 9 out of 10, really cementing their opinion that this is the one to beat, and will change fighting games forever. Ready 2 Rumble Boxing is a fun, visually appealing boxing game from Midway, developed by the same team behind the classic Defender. The review highlights the championship mode, where players build up boxers through different classes and by earning cash for training. A special Rumble feature adds depth. The game features a cartoon style with unique boxers like Afro Thunder and commentary from Michael Buffer. The review praises the gameplay, emphasizing its accessibility and depth. Players can unlock fighters using specific names. The game utilizes shoulder buttons to prevent button mashing, encouraging strategic gameplay. Overall, the reviewer is impressed, citing the game's pick-up-and-play nature and the distinct feel of each boxer. This page is a review for Soul Fighter, The Curse of Gomar, scoring it an impressive 8 out of 10. It's described as a 3D scrolling beat-em-up, and they reckon it's the second proper attempt at this genre on the Dreamcast, comparing it to Sega's Dynamite Cop, but suggesting Soul Fighter is a bit more involved gameplay-wise. They mention it's a 2-player game, which is a plus, and you get to choose from characters like Alton, a warrior, or a magician. Apparently the story is about villagers being turned into monsters by an evil force, a classic setup. The review points out that in arcade mode you get 5 continues, and the gameplay involves combos, blocking, and collecting souls from defeated enemies to regain health. There's a section called Save Our Souls, which seems to detail this soul collecting mechanic. They've also got a little box comparing it to Dynamite Cop again, suggesting that if you fancy something a bit more in-depth than pure blasting, then Soul Fighter is the better bet. You can see from the screenshots it's a proper 3D fighter with health bars and plenty of enemies on screen at once. It looks like a decent bit of fun for a 2-player session. The next page continues the review of Soul Fighter. They're wrapping up their thoughts and giving it a solid 8 out of 10. They reckon one of its biggest downsides is the lack of 2-player, which is a bit confusing as they mentioned it was 2-player capable on the previous page. Perhaps they mean in certain modes or aspects it could be better. Anyway, they clearly enjoyed it, calling it a bit of alright fun. Then on the right, there's a public service type advert warning against software piracy, you know the drill back then. It's got a stark image of coppers arresting some young lad, with the headline, "Don't play games with criminals, it will end in tears." Very dramatic. It's from ELSPA, the games industry body, reminding people that game piracy is a serious crime, with potential fines and even prison sentences. They even list a bunch of recent convictions with names and details of fines and community service, presumably to scare people straight. They're pushing the message, "Don't risk it," and giving a phone number and website for more info on software piracy, urging people to call in confidence. Pretty standard anti-piracy stuff from the time, trying to get the message across. Jimmy White's 2, Cue Ball for the Dreamcast receives a positive review. The reviewer highlights its user-friendly interface, making it accessible even to beginners. The game features well-rendered tables, realistic physics, and includes various minigames like One-Armed Bandit, Drop Zone, Drafts, and Darts, adding variety to the gameplay. The review details how the Dreamcast controller is used for aiming and power. Sections like Slow Down and What's Your Game further explore the gameplay. The review concludes with a strong score, indicated by the 8 in a Dreamcast Monthly logo, suggesting it's a solid pool game. The game was released in November 1999 by Virgin Interactive, developed by Awesome, and priced at $39.99. This page features reviews for 2 games, Dynamite Cop and F1 World Grand Prix, both for the Dreamcast, naturally. Dynamite Cop is up first, and it's described as a proper sequel to Die Hard Arcade, a beat-em-up where you're rescuing the president's daughter. It mentions selecting from 3 commando types, and the gameplay being about punching and kicking your way through hordes of enemies. They highlight nice touches like survival mode and versus mode and the sub-game tranquilizer gun, which sounds a bit of fun. It gets a solid 6 out of 10. Next up is F1 World Grand Prix, and it's all about bringing proper F1 simulation to the Dreamcast. They reckon it nails the driving experience and telemetry, and it's got all the 98 season events in there. Graphically, they mention some slowdown, but overall it looks decent enough, especially considering it's on the Dreamcast. They say the gameplay and controls are solid, particularly the analog stick support, and it's a good F1 racer overall, also scoring a 6 out of 10. Both get the same score. Interesting. Suzuki All-Star Extreme Racing for Dreamcast receives an 8/10 review, praised for its balance of realism and fantasy. The reviewer initially found the game aggravating, but was quickly won over by its electric atmosphere. The game successfully captures the feel of superbikes, offering stable and controllable handling. The review highlights diverse race modes. Brooklyn Nights offers a vivid city circuit. Castle Raceway showcases stunning European castles and is considered the best track. And Rocky Drift provides a challenging mountain course. The analog pad works perfectly, enhancing gameplay. The review recommends the game for superbike fans, emphasizing its superiority over other bike racing titles. This page features a couple of Dreamcast game reviews. First up is Sega Bass Fishing, which scores a solid 8 out of 10. It's described as another top-notch Sega title that'll keep you hooked. The review emphasizes how realistic everything is, from the water effects to the fish themselves, and mentions various fishing spots like lodge, cape, and inlet. They talk about different lures like buzzbait and special lure and the tournament mode, where you're aiming to catch the biggest bass. It seems like a really immersive fishing experience. Next to it is Tokyo Highway Challenge, scoring a slightly lower 6 out of 10. This one's an urban racing game set on the Tokyo highways. It's praised for being ultra-realistic in style. They mention a tuning aspect where you can customize your car's engine, suspension, and even the bodywork. Gameplay sounds quite challenging, racing against rivals and the clock. While they say it's got some longevity, it's perhaps not as captivating as Sega Bass Fishing, but still a decent racer if you're into drifting and the Tokyo setting. It's worth noting the page header says Get Bass plus Tokyo Highway Challenge, suggesting these two were featured together in this issue. Also at the top, there's a section about peripherals, mentioning they are good for all driving games. This preview of Marvel vs. Capcom for the Dreamcast explores the viability of 2D fighters in the face of 3D competition, referencing SoulCalibur as a graphical benchmark. The game, featuring Spider-Man prominently, is praised for its fast-paced, arcade-style action, including turbo mode and screen-filling super moves. While acknowledging the legacy of classics like Street Fighter Alpha 3, the review awards Marvel vs. Capcom a solid 7/10, calling it bonkers. Adjacent to the game preview is a mail-order advertisement from Project K, specializing in imported video games and accessories. They offer a wide selection of Japanese import games and merchandise, including Final Fantasy and Pokemon items, for various consoles, with various payment and shipping options. This page features a review of Hydro Thunder for the Dreamcast, scoring a solid 7 out of 10. The reviewer seems quite taken with it, describing it as providing calm waters, storybook settings, sleek superboats, and an adrenaline rush. They highlight the game's initial easy-to pickup controls, but note it gets challenging later on, especially on harder difficulties. Visually, the reviewer is impressed, mentioning the graphics are smooth as a baby's behind, and the water effects are top-notch. There are screenshots dotted around showcasing the in-game action, with those speedboats racing through various courses. The What the Publisher Says box reiterates the excitement and intensity of the game, mentioning Midway, Euro.com as the developer, and highlighting the graphics and gameplay. Overall, the review portrays Hydro Thunder as a worthwhile racer on the Dreamcast, suggesting it's worth taking a few risks with this game, as you ain't got a hope in hell of winning otherwise. This page features a couple of game reviews, Buggy Heat and Aero Wings. Buggy Heat, a Dreamcast launch title, gets a rather lukewarm reception, scoring only a 5 out of 10. The reviewer reckons it could have been a decent bit of off-road racing fun, but the control system is overly sensitive, making it a bit of a handful. They mention Sega even tweaked the controls after the Japanese release, but it seems it's still a problem. There are screenshots showing the buggy racing around some desert landscapes. Then there's Aero Wings, a flight sim also reviewed here, which gets a slightly better 6 out of 10. Apparently, it's trying to be a serious flight sim, being one of the first on the Dreamcast. They reckon it was in the office for a while, in its Japanese guise. It's all about training and briefings, trying to be realistic. However, the reviewer isn't totally convinced, suggesting it's only for die-hard flight sim fans or those with cash to burn, especially if you're a Red Arrows enthusiast. They've included screenshots showing fighter jets, cockpit views, and briefing screens all looking rather technical. Below Aero Wings, there's a coming soon box mentioning Air Force Delta, another flight sim on the horizon. The next page features a review of Street Fighter Alpha 3 for the Dreamcast. It kicks off by saying it's another 2D beat-em-up, but in a good way, promising more beat-em-up action for your gaming pleasure. The reviewer seems impressed with the graphics, mentioning they look much the same as the arcade but with extra tweaks and improvements, particularly to character animation. They talk about an abundance of game modes, saying there are 11 in total, and highlighting the World Tour mode as a good way to conquer. There are screenshots showing the classic Street Fighter action, with characters like Ryu and Dhalsim in recognizable stages. On the right side of the page, there's an advert for a place called New Age Consoles, listing prices for consoles like Dreamcasts, and a bunch of second-hand games with prices, including titles like Air Force Delta, Blue Stinger, Dynamite Cop, Hydro Thunder, Jet Set Radio, Resident Evil 2 and Sonic Adventure. Below that, there's a PlayStation advert defining cheating. Pen Pen is a quirky racing game targeting younger gamers and those who enjoy unusual titles. The gameplay involves racing across 12 tracks, gliding and swimming with the A button. The game features 2 modes, including a lengthy Tricolon PvP mode. Tracks are simple, with extensions adding obstacles for increased difficulty. The review highlights a dress-up option as a positive feature. The reviewer emphasizes the game's weird nature, and the need to see it to believe it, suggesting a distinctively Japanese style. The review gives Pen Pen a 7/10 score. Alongside the game review, the page also advertises Dreamcast Monthly magazine, promoting it as the best UK Dreamcast review magazine. This page is an interview with Criterion Studios, the developers behind the game World Superbikes. It's all about their ambition to achieve ultimate realism on the Dreamcast. The team, featuring Mike, the artist and track designer, Alex, the lead programmer, and Aid, the game designer, discuss how they are pushing the Dreamcast to its limits to create a truly realistic motorbike racing experience. They talk about using the Dreamcast's processing power for detailed graphics and realistic physics, going as far as sketching out road tracks and working on grip-level feel. The interview highlights their attention to detail, mentioning how they even visited Donington to watch the World Superbikes for research. The screenshots show off the game's visuals with detailed bikes and tracks. They seem quite proud of achieving smooth and detailed surfaces. They touch on the technical aspects, like using assembly language to get the most out of the Dreamcast hardware, and how they are using textures to create a sense of realism. It sounds like they are aiming for a very immersive experience, even mentioning things like braking figures and suspension data, to really nail the feel of riding a superbike. They seem very enthusiastic about the Dreamcast's potential, and are confident they can deliver a very impressive racing game. It's clear they've put a lot of effort into research and technical development to make World Superbike something special. This page is a cheat code bonanza, a proper goldmine for Dreamcast players looking to get the upper hand in their favorite games. It's got sections dedicated to a bunch of top titles. For Sonic Adventure, it details how to unlock Supersonic and get more Sonic tokens, essential for completionists. Moving on to Marvel vs. Cap.com, there are cheats for alternate Ryus, Evil Ryus, The Lot, plus how to play as Lilith and Venom. Mortal Kombat Gold gets a good shout, with codes for alternate costumes, easy endings, and playing as Goro Sector and Noob Saibot, some of the nastiest characters on the roster. There's even a bit for Sega Rally 2, showing you how to unlock all the cars, including some of the hidden rally beasts. And lastly, Virtua Fighter 3 TB gets a nod, with cheats for alphabet characters and stage backgrounds. Right at the bottom, there's an advert for a phone cheat service. Remember those? Pay per call to get your cheat codes delivered straight to you, a sign of the times really, pre-internet days for most homes. The next page features a couple of Japanese Dreamcast imports under the banner On Import, which is always exciting for us Dreamcast fans. First up is Climax Landers, an RPG which seems to be borrowing elements from other games in the genre, described as a mix of worlds and time periods. It's got a story about a young hero called Sword, who's summoned to another world. The preview highlights that all the RPG conventions you'd expect are present and correct, which is reassuring. Graphically, it sounds like they are pushing the Dreamcast, with talk of creaky castles and vast landscapes. They've slapped an 8 out of 10 on it, so it sounds like a solid role-playing experience if you can navigate the Japanese text, which is often the import hurdle, isn't it? Then there's Poppin' Music 2, a music game, and this one's a sequel. It's coming from Konami, so you know they know their rhythm action. Apparently it's similar to, Jamalami and Parappa the Rapper, so you're pressing buttons in time to notes on screen. They reckon it's a bit harder than the first one, with more difficulty settings, and some tricky sight and furity bits, whatever they are. They've given this one a 6 out of 10. It sounds like a decent music game for import fans, especially if you're into that Japanese pop style. This page is all about getting your Dreamcast online, part 2 of a guide called www.online.com. It's breaking down the jargon with a glossary of terms like browser, email, HTML, internet, net, URL, and explaining what these all mean in plain English. There's a sightseer section recommending websites, listing whatis.com for tech definitions, and fathom.org, which seems to be about technology and the internet in general. UK Plus highlights ukplus.net as a directory for the UK internet. There's even a Sonic Foundation site mentioned, described as a good small site with fan fiction and downloads. Finally, there's a facts section answering common questions about using the Dreamcast online, like what you can do, if it supports multimedia, about browsing speed, and security aspects related to online shopping and passwords. The page also shows screenshots of web browsers running on the Dreamcast, including Yahoo, as an example of a website you can access. It's all about demystifying the internet for Dreamcast owners. The next page is an interview titled Pure Genius with Archer McLean, focusing on his Dreamcast game, Jimmy White's 2 Cue Ball. The interview kicks off by mentioning the Dreamcast as an amazing machine, capable of superb stuff, and McLean talking about the Dreamcast's power for games, even saying it's more powerful than PCS at the time for gaming, and how easy it is to convert games to the console compared to PlayStation. He discusses the game's accuracy, calling it the most impressive aspect, and goes into the complex maths needed to calculate the snooker physics. McLean is quoted saying he wanted to avoid complex maths for players, simplifying the controls, so it simply feels right. There's also talk about moving from industry veteran to new baby, as he founded Awesome Developments. McLean emphasizes the polish he adds to his titles to make them unique, showing his dedication to detail. He talks about how he's been refining the snooker game since the 90s, starting with International Karate Plus, and how he wants to get things right rather than rush a game out. He also mentions that he's given up trying to compete with new trends, and just focuses on making good games. The page features a screenshot of the Jimmy White's 2 Cue Ball logo and gameplay graphics, emphasizing the realism and polish he aims for. This page is a mail order catalog advert, showcasing a range of Dreamcast hardware, accessories, and of course a huge selection of games available to buy. You can see screenshots of titles like Incoming, Sega Rally 2, SoulCalibur, and Virtua Fighter. They've got all the peripherals too, from extra controllers and memory cards right up to steering wheels, and even a VGA box for better picture quality. And look, they're selling the Neo Geo Pocket Color as well. Flipping through the games list, it's a proper snapshot of what was hot at the time. Games like Jimmy White's 2 Cue Ball from the previous page, plus titles like Sonic Adventure, Resident Evil 2, and Metropolis Street Racer all listed. The next page is a feature article titled, The Files, The Truth Is In Here. It's delving into what industry insiders thought of the Dreamcast back in the day. They've got quotes from Gavin Cheshire, who was with Silicon Dreams at the time, talking about Sega's initial launch strategy and comparing it to Sony's. Peter Bilotta, from Interplay/Virgin Interactive, is quoted, discussing how the Dreamcast was a great starting point for developers and its cost-effectiveness compared to PCS and other consoles. Gary Bracey, Exocean, is in there saying the Dreamcast was initially seen as the PlayStation Beta, but acknowledges Sony's marketing power and impact of the PS2. Dave Perry from Shiny Entertainment calls the Dreamcast a stupid logic approach, focusing on content rather than just specs, and mentions games like SoulCalibur and Blue Stinger as examples. Kevin Shaw from Utextades talks about the importance of games being available to buy, mentioning PlayStation 2 and Dolphin as competitors. Robert K. Nask from Gigawatt Studio notes the Dreamcast's impressive specs and the advantage of direct access for PC game developers, highlighting games like NFL 2000, Rumble Roses, Hydro Thunder, and SoulCalibur. Finally, Sergei Klimov from Snowball Interactive mentions the Dreamcast's early promise and its impact on the Russian market. It's really about getting the industry perspective on the Dreamcast and its place in the market at the time. Industry opinions on the Dreamcast are mixed. Massimiliano Sacchi of Milestone Development praises the console's potential and value, citing games like SoulCalibur and Hydro Thunder. Sergei Klimov of Snowball Interactive expresses concern over limited software and the looming dominance of the PlayStation 2, despite some promising upcoming titles. Kevin Shaw believes the Dreamcast has a significant window of opportunity. Advertisements highlight retail activity. Willrons.com offers wholesale prices, contests, and mentions Dreamcast among other consoles. Another advert promotes competitive trade prices and features a Dreamcast game. Variables, a gaming center, advertises repair services, console sales, including imports, and expert assistance. This page features a look ahead to the next issue of the magazine and an advert. On the left, it's clearly a cover for next month's issue, shouting Shadow Man in big letters. It's issue 4, coming out on December 16th and promising a Merry Christmas with Dreamcast Monthly. The cover image is of the Shadow Man character himself. Below, there's a contents listing for this current issue, mentioning features on games like Clockwork Knight, Headhunter, Carrier, Blue Stinger, Incoming, House of the Dead 2, Dynamite Cop, Zombie Revenge, and reviews for games like Resident Evil 2, Sonic Adventure, Sega Rally 2, Trickstyle, and more. It also mentions sections for news, imports, letters, tips, and cheats. Docota. Flipping over to the right, it's an advert from simplygames.co.uk, pushing Dreamcast consoles. Don't get left in the dark, is the tagline, offering the Dreamcast for £169.99, claiming it's the lowest price in the galaxy. They're also selling games, Shadow Man, Wafer Striker, and SoulCalibur, all at £29.99, with dedication to gamers listed as free. They're boasting about free worldwide delivery and giving a phone number and website address.